We hear a lot about Obama wanting to create jobs with building roads, and similar projects were done during the Roosevelt administration.
Well, there wasn't that many roads being built because they didn't have cars to travel on them, so they didn't need them. And mostly the work that existed were factories, some factories that built your home products and packaged home products and things, and the farm work.
Now, were these subsidized programs?
And well, later on, WPA, which was Workmen's Progress Administration, that was the same thing as what we have welfare now. And that helped the economy because they could work. My father worked under the WPA and got a Forest Service job. He got $59 a month working for the WPA. And you could get food handouts by, my mother worked in what they called a sewing room, and she worked in a cannery to get food, and you got a share of the food or the clothing that you worked on.
Now, was this in New Mexico?
This was in Texas.
That was in Texas.
She did most of that. But all over it was like that. Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, all through that area. And
anywhere where there was a lot of farming?
Yeah.
Compared to maybe California, where the economy might have been a little bit better then? Not
really. The people there went to California thinking they're going to get a lot more money, and my brother and sister-in-law did the same thing, went to California thinking it was going to be a lot better, and it turned out they had to work in my packing sheds, vegetable packing sheds, things like that, at very cheap wages. And so it wasn't much better than any other state.
These would be like Del Monte,
yeah.
Located in Sunnyvale. I think you mentioned you worked there for a while.
Well, that was later on, but my sister-in-law worked in a lettuce packing shed. And
what year would that have been?
In about 1937, when the Depression was easing up.
So there was a noticeable easing up around the late 30s, maybe due to these programs.
Well, one thing that started the Depression declining, you might say, was because we were on the verge of war. And that opened up war plants where they made machine guns, things like that. Opened up all kinds of factories for things that were going to war, and gave them a lot more jobs. But we still worked on a farm, and we still worked for $1 a day, even then.
Even in the late 30s,
right?
Early 40s,
right.
Maybe.
The late 30s, and my first husband was making real excellent wages, and he got $250 a month. But that was top pay for executive type people. He was an engineer, a civil engineer, and that was his pay. And that was through the Forest Service. And people who worked on farms and places like that were still working for very cheap wages, at the most. By then, about $1.50 an hour, $1.50 a day. And I myself worked in the fields, hoeing cotton and picking corn, things like that, for $1 a day. I did that many days. That was when I was a teenager. And then at one time, my sister and I got a job at the high school cleaning the gym, and we were only paid 25 cents an hour.
I imagine the teachers really didn't get paid all that well back then.
No, they didn't. I don't know what their pay was, but it wasn't good.
So there was high unemployment, but the people that did have jobs, the the pay was not that good.
Right. As I said, my husband was a civil engineer, and he made top wages at $250 a month, which is not a whole lot when you've got to pay rent. Our rent was around $25 to $35 a month, and depending on where we were at. And we lived in San Francisco for a short while he went to school, and our rent there was $35 a month. And the pay still was not good, but for the times it was the best. You know, it was top wages. And then he left the Forest Service because they were going to go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and he couldn't live there because he had asthma. And so he went to work for an oil crew in Texas and got better pay. And we ended up living in Roswell, New Mexico. And he worked there for the Forest Service for a little while, and then he worked for a city survey company that surveyed lots and things for people's property. You know, that when they were buying property, he did the survey for those. And but the wages were better by then.
A lot of people are interested in Roswell, New Mexico. Of course, in 1947, the big story came out of an alleged UFO landing. What do you know about that?
They kept it quiet, and they had one little bitty article in the paper that said it was a weather balloon. That's all they said. And the story was that all of the things they found were immediately shipped to Fort Worth, Texas, and secretly, and people didn't hear about them for quite some time, and we never heard a thing. There was nothing in the papers, nothing to explain anything except that it was supposed to be a weather balloon. That was it.
Do you know anybody that owned any ranches nearby or had first-hand accounts of...
We knew a man that ran the hardware store that his son was one of the ones who found some of the debris from that. And he was his son was the one that had the metal that he had found out there that had foreign words on it, strange letters and stuff on it.
Of course, this has been on the internet, and there's a lot of YouTube videos about this metal, that it had exotic properties where you could unfold it and different things. But of course, the government has not confirmed that.
They've kept everything quiet. The real story, they've kept it all quiet.
So living in Roswell at the time, you have an impression that it might be a cover-up, that there may be a little bit more than just a top-secret weather balloon?
It definitely was a cover-up.
Elaborate on that.
Well, there was a nurse, and that evidently was that was taken to the scene, and an Air Force officer that saw all of this, but they were ordered by the federal government to keep quiet. They couldn't say anything. They were interviewed by the paper, but they said they couldn't tell them anything. So it was an absolute cover-up, yes.
That's very interesting, and I don't know if this will ever be solved. We keep hearing that the government is going to come clean on this, but that's yet to be seen.
I don't think they ever will, because they're afraid of starting a panic.
This was just 10 years or so after the Orson Welles spoof from War of the Worlds.
Yeah. And that in itself, just a movie, caused a panic. So what would the real thing cause?
And I'm sure that they were thinking of this, from whatever they found.
I think that's why they kept it quiet. They didn't want to panic like happened with that movie.